I showed up to arrest my ex-husband for organized crime. But the moment I walked in, I found myself crashing his wedding to my former best friend. The same best friend who ghosted me 5 years ago, claiming she was moving overseas. Turns out, overseas was code for hiding with your husband in a different state. I'm Sandra Martinez, and I'm a prosecutor. I've spent the last 5 years rebuilding everything Alexander Lopez took from me, including my dignity. Today was supposed to be simple. Serve the warrant, watch him get arrested, get closure. Instead, I got front row seats to the universe's most satisfying plot twist. Sometimes karma needs a little help. Today, I was that help. The federal convoy rolled through the countryside, 3 black SUVs cutting through the afternoon heat like a funeral procession. I sat in the passenger seat of my Rolls-Royce, not in my usual tailored prosecutor's suit but a red dress, with hair pulled back so tight it made my scalp ache. The arrest warrant sat in a leather folder on my lap, 23 pages of federal charges that represented 2 years of my life compressed into legal language: racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud. "You okay?" Agent Mitchell asked from the driver's seat, glancing at me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. 7 years ago, I was someone completely different. I was 25, working double shifts at Romano's, an upscale restaurant where the cheapest entree cost more than my weekly rent. My parents' cleaned offices downtown had since they immigrated, and I was trying to save enough for community college. Tips were good if you smiled enough, laughed at the right jokes, pretended you didn't notice when men looked too long. Then Alexander Lopez walked into my section. He was 32, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my car, and he had this presence like the air rearranged itself around him. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that seemed to see right through you. When he smiled at me, I felt like the only person in the room. "What's good here?" he asked, and I rattled off the specials, expecting him to order the lobster like everyone else. Instead, he asked about me, where I was from, what my dreams were, what made me laugh. I thought he was just being polite. He left a $500 tip on a $50 check. He came back every week after that, always requested my section, always stayed until closing, talking to me between tables. After a month, he finally asked, "Have dinner with me, somewhere you don't have to serve anyone." I hesitated. He was clearly wealthy: designer watch, expensive car, the kind of confidence that comes from never hearing no. And I was nobody, a waitress from a family of cleaning staff, wearing a uniform that smelled like kitchen grease no matter how many times I washed it. "Come on," he said, that devastating smile widening. "You're the most real person I've met in this city. Just one dinner." I said yes. That was my first mistake. The car slowed, and I snapped back to the present. Through the windshield, I saw Alexander's country estate spreading across manicured lawns, a sprawling mansion that looked like it belonged in a European countryside, not 3 hours outside the city. And there, on the south lawn, was a massive white tent. My stomach dropped. "Is that—" Agent Mitchell started. "A wedding," I finished, voice hollow. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, flower arrangements on every surface, parking valets directing luxury vehicles, guests in formal attire milling around with champagne glasses. Dimitri leaned forward. "Sandra, we can come back. Do this another day." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. I straightened in my seat, jaw setting. "We're doing this now." Because that dinner turned into a second date, then a third. Then weekends away where Alexander love-bombed me with an intensity that felt like drowning in champagne. Expensive restaurants where the sommelier knew his name. Weekend trips to Napa Valley and Martha's Vineyard. Designer dresses that appeared in boxes on my doorstep, with notes that said things like, "This will look beautiful on you," and "You deserve nice things." He told me I was special, different, his breath of fresh air, in a world full of fake people. After 6 months, he proposed with a ring so massive I was afraid to wear it outside. I cried yes, feeling like Cinderella at the ball, convinced my fairy tale had finally arrived. I had no idea I was marrying a monster. We parked behind a line of Bentleys and Mercedes. As I stepped out of my Rolls-Royce Noir, federal agents emerged from the other vehicles, hands near their weapons, eyes scanning the property. Professional, efficient, intimidating. We walked toward the tent, my heels sinking slightly into the grass. Through the open entrance, I could see the ceremony in progress, guests standing, heads turned toward the aisle. And then I saw her, Linda Hamilton, in a wedding dress fit for a criminal's wife-to-be, walking down the white runner toward the altar, toward Alexander, who stood there in a tuxedo, looking like every woman's dream. My former best friend, my ex-husband, getting married. Everything clicked into place with devastating clarity. Linda hadn't moved overseas 5 years ago. She'd been here. With him. Building the life she'd helped destroy. Something cold and sharp settled in my chest, not quite rage, not quite grief, something harder, more refined. Like a diamond formed under impossible pressure. "Let's go," I said, voice steady as steel. I walked toward the tent entrance, federal agents flanking me like an honor guard. The string quartet was playing something soft and romantic. Guests were smiling, some crying happy tears. None of them had any idea what was about to happen. As we reached the entrance, heads began to turn, confused looks, whispers. The music faltered, but didn't stop. I walked down that aisle not as a bride, but as something more powerful. A prosecutor, a survivor, a woman who'd crawled out of hell carrying evidence. Linda's face appeared, first in my line of sight, confusion shifting to recognition morphing into horror. Her bouquet dropped from her hands. Then Alexander turned. For one perfect moment, our eyes met. I watched shock flash across his features, followed by something that looked almost like fear, before his expression hardened into fury. "Alexander Lopez," I said clearly, voice carrying across the silent tent as I reached the altar. I pulled the warrant from my folder. "I'm here with federal agents to place you under arrest." The screaming started a second later. The officiant's mouth hung open like a broken hinge. Is there a problem?" I didn't look at him. My eyes stayed locked on Alexander as I unfolded the warrant with deliberate slowness, each crease crackling in the silence, like breaking bones. "Alexander Lopez, I'm here with a warrant for your arrest on charges of racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit." I paused, letting the word hang, and wire fraud. His face went white, then red, then back to white. 6 years ago, I thought I knew exactly what happiness looked like. Our wedding had been small. Alexander insisted on it. "Just close friends and family," he'd said, kissing my temple. "I want it intimate. About us, not a show." I'd agreed, too in love to question why a man with his wealth would want a courthouse ceremony followed by dinner at a private restaurant. Linda Hamilton was my maid of honor, radiant in pale pink, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "You're so lucky, Sandra. He's perfect. Absolutely perfect." She'd helped me pick out my dress, held my hand when I got nervous, dabbed at my tears during the vows. My parents sat in the front row wearing borrowed formal clothes that didn't quite fit, crying happy tears because their daughter had made it. My mother kept whispering to my father in Spanish, "She'll never have to clean offices. She'll never struggle like we did." I moved into Alexander's mansion the next day, this sprawling estate with more rooms than I could count, marble floors that echoed when I walked, a kitchen bigger than my parents' entire apartment. I played housewife like I was auditioning for a role I didn't understand. I decorated rooms, took cooking classes to make elaborate meals Alexander rarely ate, volunteered at the animal shelter because I needed something to fill the hours. Whenever I asked about his work, he'd just smile and kiss my forehead. "Don't worry about boring business stuff, baby. You just focus on being happy." And I was happy, wasn't I? I had everything: the mansion, the husband, the life I'd dreamed about while serving overpriced pasta to people who didn't see me. I was so naive, so trusting, so incredibly stupid. Present moment. Alexander's hands clenched into fists. "You can't do this. Not here. Not now. Actually, I can do this anywhere I want. That's kind of how federal warrants work." I gestured to Agent Mitchell and the team behind me. "These nice officers are here to make sure it goes smoothly." Linda Hamilton stood frozen at the altar, her bouquet scattered at her feet like she'd dropped a grenade. 5 years ago, I discovered I was pregnant. I was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. I planned this elaborate surprise, bought a tiny pair of baby shoes, wrapped them in a box, made Alexander's favorite dinner. When he came home, I was practically vibrating with excitement. "I have something to tell you," I said, hands shaking as I handed him the box. He opened it, stared at the shoes for a long moment. "That's great," he said, Voice flat. Then his phone rang. I have to take this. He walked out of the room mid-conversation, leaving me standing there with tears in my eyes and a growing life inside me, trying to convince myself he was just stressed with work. He was always stressed with work. Looking back, I realized he was already planning how to get rid of me. You have the right to remain silent, Agent Mitchell began, moving forward with handcuffs. Alexander's carefully constructed mask finally cracked. This is insane. Sandra, what the hell is wrong with you? I leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. What's wrong with me? I woke up. That's what's wrong with me. I stopped being the naive little waitress you could manipulate. I became the prosecutor who's going to put you away for 25 years. His face contorted with rage so pure it would have terrified the girl I used to be. But I wasn't her anymore. If you're loving this story, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Thank you. Agent Mitchell stepped forward with handcuffs, but Alexander wasn't looking at him. His eyes were locked on me, recognition spreading across his face like spilled ink. You did this. My smile could have cut glass. I did. Did you think I'd just disappear forever? Stay that pathetic little waitress you threw away? Linda Hamilton suddenly lurched toward the side exit, wedding dress bunching in her fists. An agent smoothly intercepted her. Ma'am, you need to stay for questioning. Her face crumpled. I don't know anything. I swear I don't. Save it for the interrogation room, I said. 5 years ago, I was 4 months pregnant and losing my mind. Alexander started coming home late. 3 nights a week became every night. When he finally walked through the door at midnight, he smelled like perfume, expensive, floral, definitely not mine. I tried to bring it up gently over breakfast. You've been working so much lately. Is everything okay? He slammed his coffee cup down. Can you not be so clingy? I'm building an empire here, Sandra. Not everyone can sit around the house all day. I apologized, blamed pregnancy hormones, told myself I was being paranoid. I was so determined to be the perfect wife that I made myself blind. Linda Hamilton had been my lifeline during those months, coming over with maternity clothes, rubbing my swollen feet, listening to me worry about whether Alexander was happy. He loves you, she'd say, squeezing my hand. He's just stressed with work. Men get weird when babies are coming. What I didn't see. The way she'd wait until I went to the bathroom, then slide closer to Alexander on the couch. How she'd touch his arm when she laughed at his jokes. Let her hand linger just a second too long. How she'd whisper things like, you seem tense, and Sandra's lucky to have a man like you. She played her role perfectly. The supportive best friend. The trusted confidant. She was a viper in designer heels. They started meeting at a hotel apartment Alexander kept for business meetings. Top floor, city view, king-size bed. Linda would show up in lingerie under her coat, and Alexander would pour scotch while she fed him poison disguised as validation. Sandra doesn't understand you, Linda would murmur, tracing her finger down his chest. She's too simple, too small town. You need someone sophisticated, someone who gets your world. She's pregnant, he'd say, but it sounded more like an excuse than a defense. And after, you're going to spend the rest of your life married to a waitress who asks about your day like you're working at a hardware store? Present moment. Alexander's hands were being cuffed behind his back. Wedding guests were crying, shouting, recording on their phones. Linda was hyperventilating in her wedding dress, mascara tracking down her face like war paint. This is illegal, Alexander roared. You can't arrest someone at their wedding. Actually, Agent Mitchell said pleasantly, we can arrest you pretty much anywhere. That's the beauty of federal jurisdiction. I watched Alexander struggle against the handcuffs and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. 5 years ago, I came home from a prenatal appointment to find him packing suitcases. What's happening? I asked, hands instinctively going to my pregnant belly. He didn't even look at me, just walked to his nightstand, pulled out an envelope, and thrust it at me. Divorce papers. Sign them. My lawyer will contact you about the settlement. The room tilted. What? Alexander, I don't understand. I'm 6 months pregnant with your baby. I'll pay child support. His voice was flat, mechanical, like he was reading from a script. But I can't do this anymore. This marriage isn't working. We can fix it. We can go to counseling. I don't want to fix it, Sandra. Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were dead. I want out. He picked up his suitcases and walked toward the door. I grabbed his arm, desperate. begging. Please, please don't do this. I love you. We're having a baby. He shook me off like I was a stranger asking for change. No hug, no apology, no explanation. Just the sound of the door closing and my world ending. Present moment. They were loading Alexander into the federal vehicle. He twisted back to look at me one last time, and I held his gaze with perfect calm. You destroyed me, I said quietly. Now it's your turn. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Agent Mitchell's voice droned through Alexander's Miranda rights, while wedding guests stood frozen, phones raised, capturing everything. Linda Hamilton had collapsed onto a chair, her wedding dress pooling around her like spilled milk, face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking. Do you want to say anything else? Agent Mitchell asked me. Or should we transport him? I considered it, then smiled. Actually, yes. I turned to face the assembled guests, 200 people in designer clothes, holding champagne glasses, looking like extras in a movie about rich people problems. For those wondering who I am, I said clearly, I'm Alexander's first wife. The one he divorced while I was pregnant. The baby we lost after he abandoned me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Linda's crying intensified. I thought I'd never recover from what they did to me. But I did. And I built the case that's taking him down. I gestured to Alexander being loaded into the vehicle. To everyone here celebrating this wedding, you're celebrating a lie. He's a criminal. She's a homewrecker. And this, I swept my hand across the ruined ceremony, is justice. 4 years ago, after my devastating divorce, I was nobody, less than nobody. I worked 3 jobs, coffee shop from 5 to noon, retail store until 6, then cleaning offices at night alongside my parents. I saved every penny, studied for the LSAT on buses between shifts, during lunch breaks, in the bathroom stalls when my feet hurt too much to stand. I took the test with hands that smelled like cleaning solution and scored in the 94th percentile. Law school acceptance came from a state school with a partial scholarship. It was brutal. I was older than most students, exhausted from working part-time, still processing trauma that felt like broken glass in my chest. Students half my age complained about their parents not sending enough money, while I calculated whether I could afford both textbooks and groceries. Every time I wanted to quit, and God, I wanted to quit so many times I remembered Alexander walking out, my baby's face on the ultrasound, the one they gave me after telling me there was no heartbeat. I'd remember the hospital room where they told me my baby girl didn't make it. 7 months of growing life, gone because my body couldn't handle the stress of losing everything at once. I'd remember struggling to stand up at her funeral, my parents holding me upright while I fell apart. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered, and I kept going. I channeled everything into contracts, torts, criminal procedure. I graduated top 10% of my class. I started as a junior prosecutor in the district attorney's office eventually. Low-level cases, drug possession, petty theft, assault. I prepared like every case could change the world. My boss pulled me aside after my 3rd week. You prosecute like every case is personal. I looked at him. Because crime ruins lives. I responded, clueless of the fact that I had been married to a ruthless criminal, and I was about to find out. Present moment. The federal vehicle pulled away with Alexander inside, his face pressed against the window, still staring at me with impotent rage. I felt nothing but satisfaction. Linda Hamilton lifted her tear-streaked face. Sandra, please. Goodbye, Linda, I said, turning away. Enjoy the rest of your wedding day. Federal agents gripped Alexander's arms, steering him toward the police vehicles. He twisted back violently, face contorted with rage. You vindictive bitch. You're ruining everything because you couldn't handle being divorced. My laugh was genuine and cutting. I'm not ruining anything. I'm revealing what was always there. You ruined your own life when you chose crime over humanity. His screaming faded as they loaded him into the vehicle. Linda was being questioned by another agent, her carefully constructed life disintegrating in real time. 1 year ago, I was at a conference on organized crime prosecution, drinking terrible hotel coffee and trying to stay awake during a panel on RICO statutes. During the break, a man approached me, early 30s, sharp eyes that missed nothing, journalist's notebook tucked under his arm, handsome in that slightly rumpled, too smart for his own good way. Sandra Martinez? I'm Dimitri Jones, investigative journalist. He extended his hand. I'm working on a story about organized crime in the city, and your name came up connected to Alexander Lopez. Would you be willing to talk? My walls went up instantly. I'm not talking about my ex-husband. I understand, he said gently. But I think there are things about him you don't know. Things that might explain what happened to you. Something in his tone made me pause. What kind of things? He pulled out a folder, newspaper clippings, police reports, photographs, articles about unexplained demises connected to Lopez associates, money laundering investigations that mysteriously evaporated, witness statements about racketeering operations spanning 5 states. My world tilted. No, he was a businessman. Import-export. He had clients. Shipments. He lied, Dimitri said, sympathy softening his features. I'm sorry, but your ex-husband is one of the most powerful crime lords in the city, and I think you were deliberately kept in the dark. I stared at the evidence spread across the conference room table, my entire marriage reframed as a lie. Alexander's business trips suddenly sinister, his wealth explained by blood money. I was his cover, I whispered, the naive wife who asked no questions. We started meeting regularly after that. Coffee shops, libraries, anywhere public and safe. Dimitri admitted he'd initially approached me for information, assuming I knew about Alexander's crimes, maybe even participated. I'm sorry, he said during our 3rd meeting. I thought you were complicit, but you were just another victim. The words broke something in me. I spent 5 years thinking I was too stupid, too naive, too poor to keep my husband, that I wasn't sophisticated enough, wasn't pretty enough, wasn't enough, period. My voice cracked. And now you're telling me I was married to a criminal who was using me as cover? Yes. Dimitri reached across the table, covering my hand with his. But that doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. He's a professional manipulator, Sandra. Deception is literally his business model. I looked at him, this stranger who'd upended my understanding of everything, and made a decision. Help me take him down, I said. Teach me everything you know. I want to build a case so airtight he'll never see daylight again. Dimitri's smile was fierce. Now we're talking. Present moment. Alexander was secured in the vehicle, still screaming obscenities. Linda was sobbing into an agent's shoulder. Her perfect wedding day turned into a crime scene. Dimitri appeared at my side, handing me a bottle of water. You okay? Better than okay, I said, watching the vehicle pull away. Wedding guests scattered like startled birds. Some were crying, clutching each other. Others frantically dialed lawyers on their phones, already calculating their own exposure to Alexander's criminal enterprise. Linda Hamilton's parents materialized beside her, their faces drained of color. You knew? Her mother whispered, voice breaking. You knew what he was? Linda couldn't even pretend anymore. I didn't care. I just wanted what Sandra had. I was halfway to the parking lot when I heard that. Something made me turn back, face Linda one last time. You got what I had, a manipulative criminal who'll discard you the second you're inconvenient. I give it 6 months before he's cheating on you from prison. I paused. Good luck with that. 10 months ago, I made a decision that changed everything. I was going to take Alexander down, legally, methodically, with every prosecutorial weapon in my arsenal. Dimitri and I became partners not just professionally, but in this consuming mission that took over our lives. We worked nights and weekends. I'd come to his apartment with bankers' boxes full of financial records, and we'd spread everything across his living room floor like we were mapping a war. Look at this, I'd say. A highlighter poised over a bank statement. 3 wire transfers to offshore accounts, all on the same day. He told me he was at a trade conference. Dimitri would cross-reference with his witness interviews, building timelines, connecting dots. His journalism instincts, combined with my legal training, created something formidable. The evidence we compiled was staggering. Money laundering through Alexander's import-export business, which was actually trafficking stolen goods, art, even pharmaceuticals. 3 separate incidents where rivals who threatened his territory ended up permanently out of the picture. Racketeering charges from systematically extorting local businesses. Wire fraud from elaborate investment schemes that disappeared people's life savings. It was overwhelming. Damning. Beautiful. We've got him, Dimitri said one night, sitting back on his heels surrounded by documents. Sandra, we actually got him. I burst into tears. Somewhere between the late nights and the shared takeout and the moments when Dimitri would pull me back from panic attacks about facing Alexander again, I fell in love. It crept up on me how patient he was, how he never pushed, how his hand would find mine when the memories got too heavy. "You're not doing this for revenge," he'd remind me when I wanted to give up. "You're doing this so he can't hurt anyone else. That's what makes you different from him." One particularly bad night, I woke up screaming from a nightmare about the hospital, about losing my daughter. Dimitri held me until dawn, just held me, while I cried 5 years' worth of grief into his shoulder. "I've got you," he whispered. "You're safe, I promise." And somehow, impossibly, I believed him. Eventually, one day, we walked into the U.S. Attorney's office with 17 bankers' boxes of evidence, 3 terabytes of digital files, and a case brief that read like a crime novel. The federal prosecutors spent 6 hours reviewing our work. Finally, the lead prosecutor looked up. "This is airtight. We can get a grand jury indictment and an arrest warrant within a month." She looked directly at me. "Miss Martinez, you did exceptional work here." Pride swelled in my chest, something I hadn't felt in years. "I want to be there when you arrest him. I need closure." She nodded. "We'll make sure you're present." Dimitri grabbed my hand under the table, squeezed. When we left the building, he spun me around on the courthouse steps and kissed me our first kiss, tasting like justice and hope and new beginnings. "You did it," he said, forehead pressed against mine. "You really did it." "We did it," I corrected. "Ready to go home?" he asked. For the first time in 5 years, I knew exactly where home was. 2 weeks ago, I sat in a federal briefing room watching Agent Mitchell trace Alexander's movements on a digital map like he was tracking a particularly clever rat. "He's been moving between properties for months," Mitchell explained, red dots appearing across the screen. "Shell companies, fake names, layers of protection, but we finally pinpointed him." A new dot appeared, a country estate 3 hours outside the city, purchased under the name Robert Castellano, completely off the grid. "When do we move?" I asked. "Soon. Intelligence suggests he's planning to flee to a non-extradition country within the month. We have a narrow window." My stomach tightened. After all this work, he could still slip away. What if he runs? Mitchell's smile was grim. "He won't have the chance. We'll have the property surrounded before he knows we're there. This is what we do, Miss Martinez. He's not getting away." The morning of the arrest, I woke at 4 a.m. and hadn't really slept. Just laid there staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios, possibilities, outcomes. Dimitri stirred beside me, pulling me closer. "Today's the day. Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 5 years," I whispered. "I just didn't know it would look like this." He kissed my temple. "However it looks, I'll be right there with you." I moved to the closet with deliberate purpose. My hand passed over the conservative prosecutor's suits and landed on something else entirely. A red velvet dress with a thigh-high slit. The color of vengeance. The color of rebirth. If I was going to face Alexander at what I suspected might be some kind of gathering, I wasn't showing up looking defeated. I was showing up looking like the eagle that rose from the ashes. In the bathroom, I pulled my hair back sleek and elegant, applied bold lipstick that matched the dress. Professional but powerful. Untouchable. I stared at my reflection, really looked at myself for the first time in months. The broken 27-year-old who'd lost everything wasn't staring back. Instead, I saw a powerful 32-year-old woman who'd rebuilt herself from literal ashes, who'd turned grief into a law degree, who'd transformed pain into purpose. I touched the mirror, finger against my reflection's face. "You survived," I whispered. "Now finish this." Dimitri appeared in the doorway, already dressed, and stopped dead. "Wow. You look like you're about to destroy a man's entire world." "That's exactly what I'm about to do." Instead of riding with the federal agents, I drove myself my Rolls-Royce Noir, purchased with my first big case bonus. Black as midnight, elegant as revenge. Dimitri rode beside me, the federal convoy following behind like an honor guard. Agent Mitchell had initially protested, but I'd been firm. "I'm arriving on my terms, in my car, wearing exactly what I choose." The drive was silent except for the purr of the engine. I reviewed the warrant one more time, though I'd memorized every word. 23 pages, 2 years of my life, 5 years of rage channeled into admissible evidence. My phone buzzed. "Mitchell, approaching in 5 minutes. Property secured." I straightened in the driver's seat, adjusted my dress. Behind me, The convoy of federal vehicles followed like a storm. "Ready?" Dimitri asked softly. I thought about the girl I used to be, the waitress in a borrowed uniform, the naive wife who asked no questions, the broken woman who lost her baby and her entire world. Then I looked at who I'd become. Let's go get him. Present moment. Police vehicles pulled away with Alexander, their lights painting the country estate in alternating red and blue. Crime scene investigators photographed the wedding setup, the abandoned altar, scattered bouquets, champagne glasses frozen mid-toast. Devastated guests clustered in groups being interviewed by agents. Their celebration turned into interrogation. Linda Hamilton sat alone in her wedding dress, mascara streaking down her face in black rivers. Phone pressed to her ear while some lawyer tried to explain she might face charges as an accessory. I turned toward my car, ready to leave this nightmare behind forever. "Sandra, wait, please." Linda's voice cracked. "Can we talk?" I stopped. Every instinct screamed to keep walking, but something made me turn back. Linda stood there, wedding dress dirty at the hem, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd stolen my husband. "I'm sorry," she whispered, desperate. "I know it doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry. I was jealous and stupid, and I ruined both our lives." My response was measured, not cruel but brutally honest. "You were jealous of a lie, Linda. The life you destroyed wasn't real, it was a facade over a criminal empire. You didn't win anything except complicity in his crimes." I paused, letting that sink in. "And the worst part? You threw away our real friendship for a man who was always going to betray you, because that's what he does. He used me as a naive cover wife. He used you as a replacement. Neither of us mattered to him, just what we could provide." Linda broke down completely, collapsing onto the grass in that expensive wedding dress, sobbing like a child. I didn't comfort her. "I hope you figure yourself out. I hope you learn that tearing someone else down never builds you up. But mostly I hope I never see you again. Goodbye, Linda." I walked toward my Rolls-Royce where Dimitri waited. With each step, I felt lighter, like I was shedding years of pain with every footfall. Agent Mitchell jogged to catch up. "Miss Martinez, you did incredible work here. Ever think about joining the FBI?" A small smile tugged at my lips. "I'll stick with prosecution. But thanks." In the back seat, I finally let myself collapse into Dimitri's arms, crying not from pain, but from overwhelming release. 5 years of holding myself together cracked open. "You did it," he whispered into my hair. "You really did it." "I survived," I said through tears. "That's what I did. Everything else was just me refusing to stay broken." 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching a judge sentence Alexander Lopez to 25 years in federal prison. Alexander looked back at me once before they led him away. I met his gaze with complete calm. No tears, no anger, just closure. The courtroom doors closed behind him, and I exhaled 5 years of weight. Now, I'm at the cafe where I used to study, the same corner table, where I'd cried over case books and wondered if I'd ever feel whole again. I'm working on a case file, senior prosecutor now, specializing in domestic violence and organized crime. Dimitri sits across from me, editing his article about the Lopez takedown, the piece that credits my courage and investigative work that's already been picked up by major publications. He reaches across the table, takes my hand. "I'm proud of you." I look around at this cafe where I rebuilt myself brick by brick, at the life I created from ruins, at the man who helped me remember how to trust. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's not quite true. What doesn't kill you gives you a choice: stay broken or rebuild differently. I chose to rebuild. I chose to become someone Alexander could never touch again. I chose me, and that choice saved my life. Please don't leave without subscribing. Your support helps stories like Sandra's reach the people who need them most. Thank you for reading.